So we are going to start the final session, session 9 on biomedical application of 3D printing with Mr. Vinod Kumar. So we expect all the participants to join for the final section. So we hope all the participants are getting a very good knowledge throughout the sessions. And we hope this current session also will be a highly informative session, especially the applications in the biomedical field with 3D printing. So I invite Mr. Pradeep to introduce the speaker to the audience.
Good afternoon to one and all. Welcome to the final session of our 3D FTP. We are fortunate to have industrial expert as the resource person for this session. Let us welcome Mr. Vinod Kumar V, scientist, Sri Chitra Tirunal, Institute of Medical Science and Technology, Trivandrum, to this virtual FTP. It's my privilege to introduce Mr. Vinod Kumar V before you. Mr. Vinod Kumar V has completed BTech in Biomedical Engineering from Cochin University of Science and Technology in 1999 and MTech Biomedical Engineering from IIT Bombay in 2006. He has worked with Philips Medical Systems India for 1 year before joining Sri Tirunal Institute for Medical Science and Technology, Trivandrum, in the year 2001. He is currently working as a scientist in the Department of Medical Devices Engineering at the Institute and was the coordinator of the department from 2016 to 2020. He has worked with various projects for the development of medical devices like left ventricular assist device, centrifugal blood pump, hemoconcentrator, membrane oxygenator, development of cerebral microdialysis device, suction retractor, etc. He is also involved in research projects like development of human on a chip device technology for biological evaluation, three-dimensional printing or 3D printing in congenital heart disease, etc. He has 3 Indian patents and 4 design registrations granted, and 7 Indian patents are under different stages of processing. 3 research articles and conference publications to his credit. He is the Deputy Quality Manager responsible for implementing ISO standard 13485 in laboratories and auditor for ISO 17025 for testing and calibration laboratories in the parent institute. With this introduction, I would like to welcome again Mr. V. Vinod Kumar to this session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for inviting me to the training program. So basically, I'll be sharing my experience in Chitra with reference to additive manufacturing. Just for the knowledge of the people, we are working in the institute called Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute for Medical Sciences and Technology. It is an institution of national importance with the status of a university established by an act of parliament in the year 1980. We do have a unique MTech program, MTech in clinical engineering. There's a 3 institute MTech program. First semester, it's like a unique program in India. There are 3 institutes like IIT Madras, CNC Vellore, and Sri Tirunal Institute in Trivandrum, joined together to offer a course in clinical engineering. Then coming to the institute, there are 3 wings. One is a tertiary referral hospital. Most of the people in Kerala may be knowing Sri Chitra Hospital in Trivandrum. That is the picture on the top. Then we are located at the Biomedical Technology Wing, which is located in a palace and the campus around the palace in Pujapura, where we are working on medical devices and biomaterial development and evaluation of medical devices and biomaterials. And there is a 3rd wing, HCMNN Center for Health Science Studies, who are working on public health area. Just to mention the products which was developed in Chitra and came out into the market. It all started with the development of this one. Development of a disposable blood bag in the 80s. Then later on the Chitra heart valve, which was developed, and it's been there in the market for more than 25 years. Almost 1.5 lakhs heart valves have been placed in various patients. Then there are devices like vascular graft, which are artificial blood vessels, membrane oxidator, which are doing the function of lungs during the surgery, hemoconcentrators, which are used for concentrating the blood during surgery. Then there are various orthopedic implants like Burhole button, which is used for closing the skull after certain cranial surgeries. Hydrocephalus shunt, which is used for draining the excess fluid collected in the brain to correct hydrocephalus. Concentric needle electrode for measuring electromyogram, the electrical potential generated in the muscles. Then there are vein viewer, which is used for viewing the vein for providing injection. Then we are currently working on devices like ventricular assist devices. Then flow diverter stent for aortic aneurysm repair in the brain, and so many other devices. Now, just I would like to mention the process used in medical device development so that I can link the application of additive manufacturing to all the processes. So usually we all start with a concept of a device. So the concept usually we conceive from the literature, or basically you may get input from the industry, or you may get inputs from your previous industrial partners and various other places. You start with the concept. Then from the concept, you basically develop a specification. From the concept, in the sense, along with the concept, you'll be collecting various design inputs, like what is the expectation for a medical device, what is the expectation from the physician or the doctor, what is the expectation from him. And then we look at that device, and then we try to identify the inputs for that, design inputs, like what are the functional requirements for the device, what are the regulatory requirements. Regulatory requirement in the sense, now we have the medical device rules implemented in India. So based on that, what are the points to be considered for that device, and all sorts of things we collect. So all that forms the basis of specification development. And with detailed specification, we usually go for the design phase. These days, design not only based on the mathematical calculations, we use computer-aided designs for preliminary design. Then part of the design itself these days, we do analysis of the design with the help of computer-aided analysis techniques like finite element analysis, computational fluid dynamics, or in electronic devices, you have various types of circuit simulation softwares. We use that for design and analysis of the circuit. Then, based on the design which you have in the software, computer design tools, we move for prototype development. Okay. So initially, one set of evaluation we have done with the help of a circuit maker or computational fluid dynamics or a finite element analysis softwares. Now we have to validate the results which we obtained in CFD or FEA with prototypes. So we develop prototypes based on the CAD models. Prototype development, and then developed prototypes we basically use for evaluation in simulated environments. Simulated environment in the sense, suppose if it's a device, a heart valve or a blood pump or a ventricular assist device, which is expected to deal with blood, which is a non-Newtonian fluid in the body, which is a tissue actually. We try to simulate the properties of blood with electromechanical systems, and then we evaluate the devices in simulated environments. Then we also evaluate the devices using actual human or animal blood. That's all part of prototype evaluation phase. So this is one place where additive manufacturing can help. We'll come to that later with more details. Actually, with the prototype evaluation is complete, you have the results which shows that okay, this can meet the initial specification which we have started with. So that's where we say that okay, our laboratory prototype is ready, and we will be filing patent applications, or we will be publishing the results in journals, and we will have all the results of all the evaluations done, all the design document, everything is ready. So I just wanted to mention that usually this is how the typical academic research happens. Like you start with a concept, and finally you have a prototype, and you'll have you'll have patent and publications. Usually the academic research in this country unfortunately ends here. But there are so many other stages after this to reach the market. So one is from the laboratory stage, we need to transfer the technology to the industry. And in the industry, first thing to do is you'll have to go for an industrial design. If you look at the prototype, the name prototype itself says, usually if you look at any prototype, usually the design is little crude. It may not be user-friendly in the sense it may not be ergonomic, and it may not look good. It may not be pleasing to the eyes. So that's the issue with the typical lab-based prototypes. But with that kind of a design, it may not be practical to go for the market. So there is a stage where industrial design has to come into place. Then the industrial design in the sense you may be knowing what industrial design is, and then you have in the laboratories you are making prototypes in the range of say 1 or 2 numbers, or even maximum 10 or 15 numbers in a time frame of maybe 1 to 2 years. So it's very slowly you are developing various prototypes in the lab. But if you come to the industry, there the total production numbers have to be scaled up. You may have to produce hundreds of thousands of devices in a month. So the manufacturing method will be different. So laboratory prototype, you may be using your conventional machining or like subtractive manufacturing techniques. Like you start with the okay. So prototypes usually we like use conventional machines. We manufacture only 1 or 2 numbers. Their cost is also not a big concern, because here usually we develop prototype based on certain projects, and we are developing only 1 or 2 numbers. So cost of manufacturing is not a big issue. You can use expensive chemicals, expensive manufacturing methods. It is not going to affect the cost of the product. But once you come to industry, the manufacturing method usually shifts from the conventional machining to injection molding or casting, depending on the device. The manufacturing method will be a mass production technique. And another difference is like in the laboratory, basically people working on the prototype are people who are working on the project for last 1 or 2 years. They were all experienced technical people. But once you come to industry, the scenario is totally changed. The factory manufacturing may not be done by the technically competent people. Of course, they will be technically competent, but not as good as a researcher who knows in and out about the particular device. But in the industry, the technical people itself, they'll be working on different products. So you cannot expect the same kind of competence in solving issues. So if you if you start with the design of a prototype and immediately go to the industry, there are very high chances that our design may fail in the later stages because of this changes in manufacturing techniques and all. So we have to go for a mechanical design or electronic circuit design for a mass production. So that is a change, significant change from the original design which we had. So industrial level, so the design has to be redesigned for industrial production. Usually, if you are considering all these aspects in the beginning of the research phase itself, you can actually come up with industrial great design in the beginning stages itself, but usually a redesign will be required. Then there is something called a stage called a preclinical evaluation, where the medical device Clinical stages means you are reaching the clinic or the hospital. So the preclinical evaluation phase is a phase where you are doing a lot of experiments to ensure that the device is safe to use on human subjects, and it is also having the efficacy which we intend from the device. So basically, you're trying to prove the safety and efficacy of the device in the preclinical evaluation phase. This is normally done with the help of animals also. Like we may do experiment on animals depending on the situation. Suppose if a medical device like a heart valve, you may have to implant a device in animals like sheep or pig. Let it run for a few years to understand the behavior of the device in the biological system and the behavior of the biological system with the presence of the mechanical device. And there is another phase coming along with this safety and efficacy evaluation, like the functional evaluation. That's called the biomaterial evaluation. Any medical device is made with biomaterial or materials which are compatible to the biological system. So in certain places we may need totally inert materials which does not react with the biological system at all. Certain devices requires that. But there are certain places where you want the biological system to react to the presence of the material. Maybe a bone implant is an example. We want the bone implant to get completely integrated. So you need bone growth into it. So the preclinical evaluation phase, you have the biomaterial evaluation as well. Because usually the biomaterials, depending on the requirement, it may be inert or it may be active. So that is evaluated again in different phases. So the first phase will be like you do the cytotoxicity test, hemolysis test and all, which doesn't require animals. These are done in vitro, in the sense these are done outside the animal body. Either hemolysis or blood damage test is done by taking a sample blood from the animal, and that will be like our material will be allowed to interact with the blood and see whether the material is damaging blood. Second is you try to culture cells along with this material and see whether the presence of material is doing any harm to the growth of the cells. So it's called cytotoxicity evaluation. So these are the in vitro. There are different other in vitro evaluation to prove the biocompatibility. Then later on we have to implant the material sample in the animal tissue and see how it is responding. So these are the evaluation required for proving that the material which we intend to use for the medical device is in fact good for the they are not harmful to the body, and if it's doing the right function. So with the safety and efficacy evaluation in animal and cytotoxic in vitro evaluations, we should get all the data to prove that our device is safe to use in human application. Then we go for clinical evaluation, clinical trials, where the evaluation and analysis of clinical safety and performance of the device is done in human subjects in limited numbers. Then there are concerned ethics committees. They will analyze the data, and only if it is safe to use, the regulatory authority in India, it is called a CDSCO, they will give approval for marketing the device in India. Then the device will reach the medical device market. But for the researcher, the job doesn't end here. If it is reaching the market, then there's a stage called the post-market surveillance. The research team or the company has to collect the data about the device from the market and see whether there are any adverse events, like any events which are harmful to the patient or the doctor at a later stage. So that data has to be collected and reported again to the Regulatory Authority of India, CDSCO, and also to the manufacturer, and the research team will collect the data as part of the risk analysis of the device, and then that will be used for design of next devices based on this. So that is how it is going as a cycle. Okay, now let us see how additive manufacturing of 3D printing can help. So I think you have seen about additive manufacturing for the last 2 days. I'm not going into the details. Uses of 3D printing in our areas. Why do we use 3D printing? First application is visual communication. I think you must have come across all this, but I'm just for continuing the flow, I'm just mentioning it again. Visual communication, like instead of drawing something on the paper or showing us a 3D image in the computer, you can make actual prototype, actual sample, and show it to the people so that people will appreciate better. Second is, as we are mentioning, we can make prototypes. We can make functional prototypes by additive manufacturing, and that can be used for evaluation. Third is mold or tool making. This can be made for additive manufacturing method can be used for mold or tool making. And then there is a fourth application, complex parts which cannot be manufactured using mass production techniques like injection molding can be made with the help of additive manufacturing. In fact, during the time of COVID, the 3D systems have shown that their machine was used by some of the industries for making certain parts of ventilators so that they could take the product to market easily. Basic flow is like you start with the CAD model, then convert to STL file, load it into the 3D printer, then you get the product, and then do post-processing. Post-processing is a step usually people overlook. In different machines will have different types of support structures generated during the process of additive manufacturing. And then during the post-processing, you may have to remove all the support material or the extra materials which are on that. Remove it. At times, you may have to go for a little bit of sandpaper. You have to polish the surface a little bit to get the right surface finish and all. So the post-processing is a very important step in additive manufacturing. And there are different techniques used for that. You may be aware of all that. Coming to medical application. So as we have discussed, it can be used for different applications. So one is for the medical device development. As we discussed earlier, like we can use it for visual communication to show the prototype, and then we can also use it for functional evaluation. Instead of going for a conventional manufacturing method, conventional machining method, which may take a lot of time to get the prototype, you can use additive manufacturing for getting the prototype ready, and it can be used for evaluation. Then second application is in the education, better understanding of the anatomy. Instead of showing some pictures, the teachers in medicine, they can actually print the models of certain anatomy and then show it to the students so that they can understand it better. Other application is directly in the hospital, where additive manufacturing can be used for custom-made implants. Then can be used for treatment planning. There are dental applications where you can make the certain dental materials with that. And another upcoming area is 3D bioprinting. 3D bioprinting can be used for evaluation of drugs and devices, and also for functional printed organs may come in the future for organ replacements. We have already seen it in the first slide. So basically, you start with the concept, you come up with a design, do the simulations, you have the prototype, do the prototype evaluation, animal and other evaluations, and only come to the market. So this picture on the top, prototype, we can see that it is a pump model, which you observe. You can see that there are two steel components, and other areas are all plastic. Why we went for this kind of a structure? What we intended was we needed a completely transparent casing for a pump, but there is a certain complex geometry within this metallic portion, which cannot be fabricated with the help of conventional machining on plastic. It can be done only on the metal with the help of electrical discharge machine. So that is why we had gone for metallic input and output connectors. Then it was stuck on the plastic component. That is how the prototype was made in conventional machining method. You should see that there are three components on the casing top itself. Like you have an inlet metal connector, you have a transparent body, and you have a again a metallic outer connector. So instead of the original design of a single transparent casing, because of the limitations of conventional manufacturing methods, we had to go for 3 components. So the disadvantage of going for 3 components is time, because 3 components have to be made separately. Then it was stuck on the other model. So again, there can be slight errors in mechanically when you're attaching the connector to the casing. So there can be slight deflections or slight deviation in the angle. So it may affect the results also. So there are issues in the conventional manufacturing, conventional machining method for prototyping, which we can overcome with additive manufacturing. Conventional prototyping, the processes like you do machining or milling, these are time taking, costly, and as we discussed now, there are limitations in the geometry. Certain geometry we cannot make with the conventional machines. In the mass production is done by casting, molding. They are low cost, but again there is a limitation in the geometry and cost, like it's an optimization. These are the places where our additive manufacturing can help. Why should we use 3D printing or additive manufacturing? First is the prototyping option with immediate results. It saves a lot of time. By saving time, we can finish the project early. Other advantages, since the time is less, you can come with more and more models which are refined from the previous one. Advantages, you can come up with a better and better designs. So it not only saves time, it can also help you to come up with better designs. And other application is like designs which are not possible or extremely tough with conventional machining. As we said, like the outlet and inlet connectors for our blood pump, which was having a complex geometry which we were not able to make with conventional machining. Then there are certain thin parts, of course, thin parts even with conventional machining you can make. But the disadvantages of 3D printer are rather very costly, but the cost is coming down day by day. So in the future, the cost of that may come very close to the conventional molding in that range. And till now, what the disadvantage we face is poor surface finish. Surface finish is not as good as a molded sample, and most of them needs post-processing like polishing, painting, etc. And many of the materials are not strong compared to their conventional machining counterparts. One example, as we have already discussed, like this was a centrifugal blood pump which we had developed, which had multiple components. In that, the casing was one component, which was made as 3 components and stuck together to make a single one. So with the...
Shall I interrupt for a moment?
Sure, please.
In this picture, what you are showing, the interface between the plastic component and the steel component.
Yes.
Whether some additional interface materials are used?
It's fixed with epoxy resin.
Thank you.
Okay. That's a disadvantage actually. Like you have to go make 3 components and stick it with epoxy resin. Otherwise, we can even certain places we have used threading also. You can even make the thread in both the metal and the plastic, and then you can thread it. That's also possible.
Thank you, sir.
One more thing I just wanted to add. If there is anything to be discussed, let us discuss then and there and go forward. I prefer that rather than a monologue. Just our experiences, like the development of a blood pump in the late 2000s, 2010, before 2010, which took 2 to 3 years to reach a certain stage. With the 3D printer available, a similar product took only 1 to 1.5 years to reach the same stage. So it saved a lot of time, and we could experiment with multiple prototypes of multiple designs. Various designs were tried. So it helped us to come up with a better design. So more design iterations were possible, and we were able to realize complex designs with the 3D printer. And I think you must have covered the different technologies used for additive manufacturing in some of the previous sessions, I suppose. Can somebody confirm? Pradeep ji? Can somebody please confirm whether this the various techniques are were covered sometime?
Yes, almost covered in the previous sessions. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So for our application, in medical device application, especially for polymer 3D printing, we are using two techniques. One is FDM, fused deposition modeling. Then second is a polyjet based, which is like it's almost like a typical printer. Like there are multiple print heads which prints the material layer by layer. These two technologies we have been using. Then there are recent techniques like DLP printers, which are cost effective and which is becoming popular these days. But we have used only FDM and polyjet so far.
Sir, is it DLP or SLA? Right.
DLP.
Yeah.
These days, DLP printers are coming. They are pretty cost effective, I think, than SLA. SLA needs a laser, but DLP needs a small DLP panel, like a tablet screen.
This SLA has anything like this issue with biocompatibility?
No, biocompatibility has to do with the material. The SLA also.
Okay. That photopolymerization.
Photopolymerization. Only thing is we have to ensure that it is fully polymerized, or there has to be some kind of post processing. Like even after SLA, you may have to keep it in a UV chamber for some more time so that all the monomer is completely polymerized. Otherwise, it will not be biocompatible.
Yes,
Even if the material is of biocompatible grade, presence of monomer will be toxic. So you have to ensure complete polymerization. So some post-processing will be required.
So one more alternative is the like visible light SLA.
Yes, that will be an option. But we
Sir,
haven't tried it.
One question.
Yeah, please.
If you want it to be fully polymerized, you require stoichiometric ratio for the materials, is not?
We haven't worked on the materials in this aspect. We are actually users of these techniques. I haven't worked on the 3D printer or the like in the sense I haven't researched on the 3D printer or the aspects of materials really.
Okay.
Yeah. But as far as we are concerned, we needed two types of materials. One is biocompatible material, which meets at least some criteria of ISO 10993. Depending on the application, like for a blood-related blood pumps application, we need a material which is not hemolytic or which is not creating any blood damage up to 1 day. Other second type of material which we need is for making the outer side of certain devices or something which is only used for a demonstration purpose, where the biocompatibility is not an issue, where transparency or whether it has to be transparent or opaque, rigid, flexible. So those are the mechanical requirements of that. So we need those two types of materials. One is biocompatible and the second one is non-biocompatible. Those two requirements we have. Then most of the application needed very good surface finish. Waviness should not be there. Then the temperature stability should be stable at elevated temperature, because most of medical devices is evaluated at 37 degrees Celsius or that range. So it has to be stable above that temperature range. And for getting better surface finish, the resolution has to be much better. So applications, medical implants, it can be used for surgical planning, it can be used for orthotics, it can be used for developing micro channels. These are some, this is the machine which you have, the polyjet machine for Stratasys, which can print 3 materials at a time. And the second machine, an FDM machine from Olivetti, We are using these machines for one application. This one is a prototype. This is used for visualization. This is a tissue heart valve model made only for visualization. This is a model of a heart printed for surgical planning. And the third one is a scaled down model of orthotic exoskeleton. And the fourth one is we have tried to make micro channels. But with the present technology which we have, making micro channels were not feasible. It was not up to the mark. Then we have also tried precision assembly fixtures and for functional evaluation. Again, this is a scaled up model of a coronary stent. This is again for visualization. Then in metal 3D printing, we have used, but we don't have the machine. We have used selective laser sintering technique for our ventricular assist device prototyping. Again, there are biocompatible materials available. Applications like orthopedic implants and artificial organs. This is an example of ventricular assist devices which we have used. And this is some of the examples shown by the companies as the application of additive manufacturing, custom-made implants for, like it's designed for the particular patient. Then there are certain design considerations. I think this must have been covered in some other sessions, but just to add on that, if you want to fabricate a prototype like this, there are other options like if you say you can invert it and do, agreed, but I just want to say a certain area of a component is having a cantilevered kind of structure. You may need a support below that to manufacture this kind of a structure. You need some kind of support material below the cantilevered portion. Okay. In certain technologies, the support is made by the same material used for prototyping, but in a highly porous manner, which can be broken, which you can actually break off, and then you get the prototype. Or second method, in polyjet tunnel, you have a support material printed there, which can be cleaned with the water jet or even in ultrasonic cleaning with certain chemicals. So the support material has to be removed, and it can also affect the surface properties. Like in FDM or even metal sintering method, there will be support materials which, when we break off, when we break it away, there will be surface imperfections because of the presence of that, and that we have to again polish and use. So that design limitation or some post processing is required. Again, this is picture is from the internet. Picture of dental this thing. These models, the white, the pipe-like structure you see on top are the support materials, which I have just mentioned. So this support material is removed and it is polished to get the shape. This is one aspect. So you have to remove the support material and then polish the area to get the actual shape. So some amount of post-processing is required always. Coming to clinical application, one area is anatomical understanding. There are certain anatomies where, like one example is a crisscross heart. The location of the heart, various areas are interchanged in a congenital defect, which even if you go for the best scanners, visualizing it on the computer may not be you may not get the full picture. Of course, the radiologists are trained to get that information, but for others in surgical planning, if they can print the model into the actual shape, then you can see that how it is going, what is the geometry. Then the surgeons can plan the surgery based on the actual geometry. So that is one for surgical planning. So basically, the surgical planning, if you have a 3D model in your hand like this, the surgeons can plan the surgery in a far better way. and also it enables, of course, the same thing. You can plan the surgery. And again, if you're using if you're using an implant, okay, you're trying to implant one implant in the patient body, and if the surgeon can actually print out the model of the patient's actual anatomy, he can fit the device on that model from outside itself. Then at times you may have to, surgeon has to cut certain portion of the implant so that it suits the actual patient geometry, so that all the work can be done on the 3D printed model anatomy before opening the body and see the actual anatomy. So you can have a far better planning. Again, as we discussed, decision making or surgical planning, there is something called a biventricular repair. Like there are certain cases where people are born with single ventricle, which can be closed to make two ventricles if you can properly plan it. So that's one application. Same application. Then, as we discussed, planning interventions. Like this is a device placed in the aorta to improve the blood flow in the aorta. So if the doctor can make the 3D model of the aorta and place the device previously and see whether it is going to improve before going on to the actual patient and doing experimenting with the patient's body. These are all the same thing. CT angiography of the heart and the aorta is taken. Then we can actually place the device in that and see whether it improves. That has multiple applications. Then another area is study of flow dynamics. The model of the blood vessel can be printed in a transparent blood vessel model. Then we can pass fluid through that and see the flow dynamics within the anatomy before deciding on what treatment to be used. Then other applications, as already we discussed, custom-made implants. That is especially useful if like in areas like skull and the face, where only one side is damaged. One side some implant has to be placed. Then we can actually scan the other side of the patient, make the implant as a mirror image of the other side, so that the symmetry will not be lost in the patient. So in appearance, for him it will be more confidence boosting to have like without any deformation, the face will look like like how it was in the beginning, how it was earlier. Size and the geometry matching the patients. This can be done based on MR or CT scan. And we can even the heart tissue, like bone implants and all, we can make with designed porosity. Porosity of the implant we can actually design to whatever levels we want. This cannot be achieved with conventional machining techniques, designing or tuning the porosity. This is a picture of one patient who had a defect in the cranium, which was repaired with a custom-made implant, and this is how he is in the later stage. These images are actually some intermittent stages of processing to actually take the exact geometry for 3D printing. And then there's a facility in Sri Itra Hospital for printing heart models for surgical planning. Another area of application, as we discussed earlier, is 3D bioprinting. That's a method of directly printing cells along with bioink. Or bioink is something like a hydrogel-like of structure where the cells can survive. We can directly print the cells along with the bioink, creating a tissue. One application of that is toxicity evaluation. We had earlier discussed that biomaterial evaluation, toxicity of biomaterial is evaluated by implanting the material in the animal body. If you want to reduce the number of animal usage, we can, this is one emerging area. To reduce the number of animals, what is done now is we can print a liver model, we can print a kidney model, we can print a lungs model, any model. Then we can test the device or the drug in this particular organ, small miniaturized form which was printed, so that the number of animals used can be reduced. Then the emerging area is directly printing organs or organ parts for implantation. In the future, we may see all this, like directly 3D printed liver, directly 3D printed pancreas, and all may come in the future for organ transplantation. Now it looks very futuristic, but it's becoming a reality. Whatever you mentioned already, animal evaluation of toxicity of drugs or devices can be done with the 3D printed organs. So usage of animals can be reduced, so the concerns about animal ethics can be addressed. Again, the ultimate use, 3D printing of the organs for transplantation will be the future. The processes like the hydrogel with nutrients is called the bioink. That will be seeded with the cells from a bioprinter. So the bioprinter extrudes the ink and cells into the plate kind of area in the actual shape required. Then it can be cultured in a bioreactor to form the device. So later on in the future, we may see that we can actually print the tissue and use it directly on human subjects. There is a facility of 3D bioprinting also in SCT-MST. And 2-3 projects are ongoing there. One is in vitro 3D drug screening test system. Second is the development of bioengineered and transplantable organs like liver and skin are ongoing. Okay. So there are various people around the world work on organ 3D printing in different areas. I'll stop my PowerPoint slides here. We'll go for discussions.
So that printing, you have shown the setup and all. So is it means any products already made, or it is in the research level?
One second, sorry. I'm sorry. In between, can you please repeat?
Yes, sir. So actually, you are shown on the bioprinting, sir. That last slides you are shown, and your setup also you are shown in the Sri Chitradinal Institute.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it products are already developed or in the research level, sir?
This is in the research level. People are working on developing this thing, hepatotoxicity testing models, like liver toxicity.
Okay. So in that, the living cells will be taken, sir, as a
Yes. Currently, what they're doing is like they take animal cells from the animals. They isolate the particular cell, and then that cell will be seeded in the bioink. So bioink will have the nutrients and the right environment for the particular cell. So the bioink has to be specific. If it's for liver tissue, it's gel has to be the bioink has to be formulated for liver tissue. If it's for kidney, that has to be tuned for kidney. So the cells along with this bioink will be printed through the nozzles of 3D bioprinter into the particular
that
shape.
printing process will be involving heat or something like that during that
Depends, but even if it's heating, it cannot exceed 37 degrees. Usually above 37 degrees, the cells will not survive.
Yeah.
And again, UV and all will not be a practical option because the UV curing
It may kill the cells.
Yes.
Yeah.
3D image acquisition from MRI or CT without data distortion. Anjali Vinod had asked a question. Anjali, actually, unfortunately, I haven't worked on 3D image acquisition portion because I'm basically a biomedical engineer working on medical devices. But there are certain people work in our organization in image acquisition, like basically the radiology people, people from interventional radiology department can help in this aspect. Unfortunately, I'm not the right person. Sorry. Any other questions?
Hi, sir. I'm Anjali. So, while 3D printing with actual cells, is there any possibility of preserving the cells without damaging? I mean, in a long term, when we are using it in our body.
For serving the cells for a longer time, there are techniques for transportation of the cells around. There are technologies for storing it for a longer time.
Okay, sir.
So,
Yes.
sir, I have a doubt, question to so I can answer from you.
Okay.
Actually, what is the part that deals with this when we deal with in vivo biomedical applications? Some sort of ethics comes into effect. We need to overcome those.
Okay. There are ethics part in our research area. Two types of ethics comes. First is animal ethics. Second is ethics of clinical evaluation. Okay. Shall I explain a little bit on both or
Yes.
Okay. So first is animal ethics. Animal ethics is, I would say, a little more stringent than human ethics protocols in India. It's with a valid reason because for humans there are the same human can talk for himself and there are relatives to talk on behalf. So the norms for animal ethics is little more stringent. Criteria is little more stringent. In the sense, it's not that like human ethics is not stringent; it is also stringent. Then the second part of this thing is ethics committee before going for clinical evaluation. So every hospital will have ethics committee, institute ethics committee, which will have many members. One will be somebody from the legal side, a retired judge. Some other member will be like a technical person. Other member will be a social scientist, or and then like that there will be members from different sections of the society. Every application will reach that institute ethics committee only if that approves. The device will be used for device will be going for clinical use, clinical evaluation. To reach the institute ethics committee, there is usually a stage before that. In our institute, it is called technical advisory committee. So it will be a committee to technically assess the proposal. So the institute ethics committee will not have technical people to say that whether the device is safe to use. They will look at all the other aspects, whether technically whether it is acceptable, safe to use. That will be assessed by a technical assessment committee before institute ethics committee. So in certain places, both the committees may be single one committee which will which may do the function, but we have two separate committees. So the committee will first study the technical aspects of it, all the safety and efficacy data based on animal trials, in vitro trials, all the material safety evaluation results. All this will be studied by the technical committee. They will recommend it to the institute ethics committee. Only then the institute ethics committee approve it for clinical use. Only then it can be used for clinical evaluation. So that is the process. Does that answer the question?
That means all these are long procedures. We need to wait
Yes.
for
Yes, yes.
Yes.
It is actually, that is why for a medical device to reach the market, usually it takes around 7 years at least. Usually, because animal ethics committee evaluation, animal ethics approval itself may take 6 months to 1 year or even more than that, depending on the complexity and the kind of questions we get back. Then for animal again institute ethics committee, again it may take time. So putting it together, that is why it's why we don't have so many medical devices coming into the market.
Then for a researcher who researches in this area, means biomedical engineering area, what exactly is the usual procedure?
Yeah, I was showing you as one slide, if you remember, like the process. I'll just share it. Shall I?
Yes, once.
I'll just share the slide. Is the slide visible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, usually, usually we start with the concept and we have a laboratory prototype, filing patent application, publication. Usually the academic research ends here. Taking it forward from this point to this area is the most difficult part actually. Getting the approval and doing all the evaluations and taking it to the market. That is where we have to work with industries. We may have to contact industries, and then commercialization has to go through industrial partner. The startup ecosystem in India is improving. Then if it's again, I forgot to mention one point. Medical devices are classified into class A, B, C, and D. Class A is the lowest risk device. The risk will be very low. Class D will be highest risk implant devices. So there are stages in between. So based on the risk classification, Class A or Class B devices which are not highly risky can be taken in a faster pace. Class C and D devices which are more riskier will take longer time. So if any of you are working on Class A or B devices, then through a startup route also it can be commercialized faster. But if it's C or D implantable kind of devices, it's better to collaborate with industries or mainly industries for commercialization.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Any other?
Yeah, we have a very wonderful session. That was especially the biomedical application of the 3D printing today. And we have Mr. Kumar from Sri Chitra Institute to give us an input. So, like, what are the latest applications, especially in the biomedical, bio-ink, as well as the research that is going on at SCST. And we are very thankful to you, sir, for giving us a glimpse on the various biomedical applications going around. And on behalf of our institute, as well as on behalf of the Kerala Technology University, we express our sincere thanks to you for presenting your great ideas before us. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for inviting me to the program. Thanks.